Hello everyone. Can I get everyone's attention please? Princetonians, friends, family, and fans of Greene. Princeton Tourism extends a warmest welcome to this Walk of Fame dedication ceremony as we honor the legendary Gary Greene of Donald J. Today we gather here in the heart of Princeton South Main Street under the iconic Apollo Theater to celebrate a musical icon whose innovative contributions to the world of rock and progressive music have left an indelible mark on the industry. This star will forever serve as a reminder of Gary Greene's extraordinary talent and the joy he has brought to music enthusiasts worldwide. Before we begin the dedication, I am thrilled to invite Jim Dunn to the podium to share a brief history of Princeton's Walk of Fame. Princeton is a town that celebrates tradition, and we have Jim to thank for this yearly dedication tradition. Let's please welcome Jim.
Yay! Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. It's so great to see another Sidewalk Star being dedicated. The first Sidewalk Star, which was installed in 2018, is an example of observing something another city is doing right and then duplicating it. Here's the story about how Princeton's first Sidewalk Star came to be. My wife Jamie and I went to visit our daughter Angie in St. Louis, Missouri in 2014. Angie had the idea that we must visit the Del Mar Loop, which is an entertainment district on the city's west side. We drove there, parked, and found ourselves strolling through an attractive area of restaurants, bars, and businesses, some of them centered on pop culture. Looking down on the sidewalks as we walked along, I noticed a series of brass stars with names of famous people associated with St. Louis set in the pavement. Plaques set in the pavement next to the stars told about these men and women of accomplishment. We had stumbled upon the St. Louis Walk of Fame. The brainchild of Joe Edwards, the Walk of Fame honors more than 150 people over the course of 6 city blocks. People such as Chuck Berry, Yogi Berra, Jack Buck, Harry Carey, Miles Davis, Buddy Ebsen, Eddie Grable, Ulysses S. Grant, Scott Joplin, Charles Lindbergh, Agnes Moorehead, Vincent Price, Joseph Pulitzer, Red Scott, Ike and Tina Turner, Tennessee Williams, and Shelley Winters. At that time, I was involved in the local Rediscover Richard Widmark group. Looking at those sidewalk stars in St. Louis, I started thinking how cool it would be to honor Princeton's Hollywood hero with a similar treatment. Thus began a period of time doing research, traveling to St. Louis, raising funds, and reaching out to Princeton city leaders for approval and support. The result was the creation of a brass star and plaque honoring Richard Widmark, identical to the stars and plaques in St. Louis. Those items were installed 5 years ago by city workers on the sidewalk here in front of the Apollo Theater here, where as a youth, Richard Widmark once worked as a doorman. I credit the late Bart Cassabaum with much of the work that went into this project over the years. And here's a photograph of Bart with the first sidewalk star that honored Richard Widmark. He was pleased, as I know I am pleased, by the fact that the idea has flourished beyond the first Richard Widmark sidewalk star to now encompass other famous folks who called Princeton home at one time or another. And that's the story of the first sidewalk star on Princeton's Walk of Fame. I offer my congratulations to this year's honoree, Gary Greene. And I thank you again for inviting me to speak. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Joel Querum, who was mayor of our wonderful community for 2 terms, 8 years, and is also involved in the tourism committee.
Now, first I'd like to thank Gary and Judy for asking me to speak today and to introduce you. And it's truly an honor to be here and to be able to speak before everyone. It was a year ago, during last year's Homestead Festival, that I approached Gary about the city honoring him with a star and plaque. His career accomplishments and the qualifications more than justify the honor. But that aside, Gary lives in Princeton, and he has for many years. It's an oversight that he hadn't been honored earlier. When you think about it, it's remarkable that a town the size of Princeton has produced 7 individuals who have gone on to make a sustained and positive impact and name for themselves, nationally and internationally. All 7 have, or will have, a star and plaque on our Walk of Fame. All of our past and future honorees have a direct and significant tie to Princeton. Gary's tie to Princeton is that a year after Gentle Giant disbanded, which was in 1980, Gary moved to Princeton, and he's never left. 42 years and counting. And I think we have Judy to thank for that.
Here we go, Judy.
Before we unveil the star and plaque and introduce Gary and his son Chris, I want to share with you what is inscribed on the plaque. Gary was born in London in 1950. He was a founding and lifetime member of the British progressive rock band Gentle Giant. They performed from 1970 to 1980. In 2015, Rolling Stone magazine ranked their 1972 release, Octopus, as the 16th greatest progressive rock album of all time. During the 70s, Gentle Giant toured the US, Canada, and Europe. They shared the stage with many bands, including Jethro Tull, Yes, Black Sabbath, Frank Zappa, ELO, Thin Lizzy, and King Crimson. Guitar was Gary's primary contribution to the band, but he also played the mandolin, the recorder, and the bass. As lead guitarist, Gary brought a blues influence to the band. His talent as Gentle Giant's guitarist has him listed in various publications as one of the greatest progressive rock guitar players of all time.
Woo! Yeah. Amen. Amen.
That's the other guy.
In the years since Gentle Giant disbanded, their popularity has grown to cult status, resulting in many reissues and box sets covering their music. The most recent re-release is their album Civilian in May of 2022. Gary moved to Princeton in 1981, where he lives with his wife Judy. He continues to play his guitar locally, in public, and with friends. And the plaque is dated 2023. And now, the time has come for Gary to take his position alongside Richard Whitmark, Catherine Hayes, Nick Young, Keith Knudsen, and Douglas Spencer on Princeton's Walk of Fame. So I invite the 3 of you to come up and unveil the plaque and stars.
Are we going to do this now? Yeah. All right. Okay. I'll reveal, yeah. Good.
So I'd like to introduce Chris Greene, Gary and Judy's son, to come up and say a few words. Chris?
Wow, that's really cool. It's one thing to hear about it and think about it, but it's another thing to actually see it there on the sidewalk and just think that it's going to be there forever. And who knows what people are going to be, seeing and wondering and thinking back. But yeah, I'd really like to start by thanking Jim Dunn for getting this rolling in the first place. It's such a wonderful idea and a great thing to just sort of mark people who have been through this town and the controversy Joel as well. Like when he first reached out to me about this, I just like, wow, what a really kind and cool thing to do. And especially when Gary is sort of an adopted son of this town. Just the fact that he's made it our home for 43 years now, and the fact that it's amazing. But yeah, I was going to tell a couple of funny stories about how, you know, people ask me all the time, like, well, what's it like having a dad who's like a rock star? And it was really normal, to be honest. You know, my mom worked for a promoter in Denver and sort of been around the music scene myself a bunch, and ended up later doing a bunch of work in it. But like, it just was so demystified and normalized that it just didn't seem like that big a deal. And what was great compared to all my friends' dads is that when he was on tour, he was home 24/7, so you had him full time there. But I vividly remember when we moved to Portsmouth a couple of years in, after we moved to England, they were getting ready to do a European tour, and the van pulls up, and Gary's getting ready to leave, and he starts getting sad, and his eyes start watering up, and like, I looked at my mom, like, what's going on? And he's like, well, he's upset, he's leaving. Like, leaving? He gets to go on tour and play guitar in a rock band. That's like everybody's effing dream, and he's like upset about it? I just could not get my head around it. I was like, what, are you crazy? And then I find, you know, I'm older now, I realize leaving family is challenging, but at the time I could not get my head on someone could be upset about getting to go play guitar in a rock band and go on tour. And then but it did, and it was funny for my peers because their fan base was certainly not folks that were my age necessarily. And in England at that time, there was a whole like punk explosion and new wave and all that stuff. And so, you know, a lot of my friends weren't really clued into what Gentle Giant was. And so in, I think it was 79, my great-grandfather died, George Norton, over in Neponset, and my mom had to fly over here for the funeral. But for some reason, I had school and stuff like that, so I couldn't go. So my dog and I had to go up to the studio in London because Gary's band was recording. And so, you know, I was 12, I couldn't really stay home alone. And then, so we go up there, and so I'm having to hang out for a couple weeks. So there's two parts of the studio. There's a really larger kind of A room, and then there's a smaller kind of mixing room. So Gentle Giant's in the big room, and Pete Townsend from The Who is mixing down his first record, solo record, Empty Glass. So I get to meet him like day one. Like, that's pretty cool. So he clears out, and then the Pretenders, who came in to mix their very first record, no one even heard of them yet. They hadn't even put a record out. And so Chrissy Hynde is American, I was American, my great-grandma died. So she kind of took me under her wing and sort of like my mom for the week. And then, so then as Gentle Giant starts winding down in the main room, this band called The Clash come in to do the rehearsals for what became London Calling, one of the most seminal records of all time. And so I got to sit there as a 12-year-old kid and watch 3 days of London Calling rehearsals. And, you know, underscoring Gary's just, you know, ability, he's also very, very humble. And there's a hilarious thing that happened then when The Clash set up really tightly together. There's this really huge room, but it was a really tight, they were like really tightly together, just running through all the songs. And our dog, our old English sheepdog Elsa, who's buried over there at my grandparents' old home on Boyd Street, she walks up and takes a huge dump right in front of Joe Strummer. And like, the rest of the band thought it was the most hilarious thing they'd ever seen. And he was kind of like a little miffed, like almost taking it with some sort of commentary, you know, on what was going on. And then Gary had to go like, pick it up, like, sorry, man, you know. It was like the most hilarious thing. And Gary was just like totally hilarious and humble about it. But then, you know, it got, the next year, the school system in England was sort of a little challenging. And my mom's like, you know, no, I really want my kid to grow up in the same sort of community I did. And it turns out not just the same sort of community, but the actual same community. And so a place where I would get a really great education, I would make lifelong friends, and I would be raised with the values that generate out of a small, close-knit community like this. And I could not, I mean, you know, there's so many of my high school friends that were texting each other coming in here. We retain these bonds, and we'll have them for a lifetime. And so, you know, so they came back here basically for me to go to school was the deal. Like, I'd be here for 4 years and cool, and then I graduated high school barely, and
I was unemployed. I had no band.
And then, but then I go to college, and get out of college, I'm just kind of like, hey guys, like, I'm done. Like, you're still in Princeton. What's going on? I thought this was going to be like a stop on the way for you guys, and they're like, no, like, Princeton's our home. Like this is really become our home, and we want to stay here. And I was like, wow, that's really phenomenal. And so yeah, so it just really that it's great that not only did Gary adopt Princeton as his home, but Princeton sort of adopted him as one of their own. And I guarantee you, 90% of the people that know Gary in this town probably have no idea that he's this famous rock star. You know, that they just see him at True Value.
And that's fine.
And it's great, but that's exactly who he is. So, you know, as good as a musician and whatever he's been an even better father and husband and member of our family. And it's just, we're so grateful that he came into our lives and that brought us up to Princeton. So, again, thank you to Jim, thank you to Joel, and thank you to Gary. And yay!
Thank you so much, Chris. That was lovely. I can only add a little bit to that story at Wessex Studios. It was hired.
When you recorded?
Yeah, no, I remember it very well. I told Chris that he had to look after Elsa because I was busy. And she got loose, and as he said, he took this huge dump in front of Joe Strummer. And I'm on my hands and knees cleaning it up, and it was that like choir carpeting, all woven, you know, it was really in there. And I'm like, sorry, Joe. Hey, rehearsals sound real good. But thank you so much. I'm going to choke up now. I wrote something down to say, but it's notes, but it's really just express my gratitude to everybody for this. Thank you guys. I'm going to miss all the names, but it's wonderful. Thank you. I'm very touched. And it's just great that Princeton is like, I've got to read this one because I can't remember. My memory's gone now. It's just great that Princeton is giving recognition to the arts, you know, with the conferring of these plaques on musicians and movie stars, you know, because I think that art is a pillar of our lives. And, more art and music in the world can only be a good thing. So I'm all for that. You know, whatever promotes art, let's do that. And like I said, it's just awesome that this plaque, you know, will be there long after I'm gone. There'll be this plaque, and I'm really proud of this. And I thank you so much. And really, the only thing I'll finish with is thanks. I hope my plaque is tripping up unsuspecting tourists long after I'm gone.
Long live the Giants!
There's no encore, it's not a rock concert.
Might have to build another motel bringing them tourists.
Oh.